Diversity being organized by the IQAC of ARST College in collaboration with the Ministry of Education's PMMMNMTT Teaching Learning Center, Ramanujan College, University of Delhi. I, Dr. Shobha Dwivedi, take this opportunity to welcome all of our participants to what promises to be an extremely important session on narrative as enactment in folk tradition. Friends, as you are all aware that India is a land of rich cultural diversity and has thousands of indigenous performance traditions, which besides being mass entertainment have served as a means of social integration and have fulfilled certain emotional and social needs of the people. They have also been used as indigenous instruments of interpersonal, intergroup, and intervillage communication for ages. These traditions are part of human intangible cultural heritage, as the need for song, music, mirth, and group entertainment was profoundly ingrained in human nature. These folk traditions have also been extensively used in India to raise vital social, political, cultural, and other kinds of awareness among the populace, fostering social consciousness among both the rural and the urban people. Now, presently, there is a need to go back to the traditions, the indigenous traditions, and all sort of traditions. I'm not merely talking about the theatrical traditions, in order to reinvent our present, which cannot happen unless we have a cognizance of our past. And yes, with, going with the postmodernist rejection of the grand narrative and rejection of the elitist trends, the Western and the de-glamorization of the cultural factors, we can see that we are looking forward to adopting our folk trends that have sustained us, that have also guided us for long. Folk drama is certainly the richest and the deepest rooted aspect of our tradition and culture. It's also related to exploring and revisiting the indigenous knowledge system to meet the present challenges. If folk culture is the sum total of lived and shared experiences of a community, folk theatre is a representation of its lokavritti, the imitation of men and their doings. As in different time and age, writers talked about the manners and the morals of the age getting reflected through literature. So Sage Bharat in Natya Shastra has talked about depiction or portrayal of lokavritti, and that's why the term rupak for natak in Hindi is popular, is acceptable. Sage Bharat has referred to uparupakas in Natya Shastra, by which he certainly meant the performances in villages. The dramatic lyrical pieces in Rig Vedas are also expressions of folk forms. Over the years, we have seen playwrights like Girish Karnad, Habib Tanveer, Vijay Tendulkar, Badal Sarkar, Dhanveer Bharti, Chandrasekhar Kambar, K.N. Panikar, Ratan Tiyam, and Kanai Lal, and Professor H.S. Shiva Prakash, who himself is a renowned playwright, recreate the folk traditions, folk theatrical traditions, folk idioms, and folk symbols and myths through theatre practices. A new range of themes and symbols are continually being imparted to it, which is making it all the more relevant and important in our times. It most certainly falls in the broad gamut of post-colonial experience reality, and playwrights continue to engage with folk crafts and idioms without espousing any particular ideology and amplifying the cause of the underprivileged at the same time. Friends, it's my distinct honor and privilege to introduce you to Professor H.S. Shiva Prakash, who retired as Professor of Theatre and Performance from JNU, from the School of Arts and Aesthetics. He's also a renowned poet, playwright, and scholar, born in Bangalore in 1954. Sir is considered one of the most influential voices in Kannada literature today. He's a recipient of several prestigious awards, including the Sahitya Academy Award in 2013, Sangeet Natak Academy Award, 4 Karnataka Sahitya Academy Best Book Prizes, and the Karnataka Natak Academy Award. He's an internationally acclaimed expert on European and Indian theatre. He is a prolific writer and has published widely on medieval literature, particularly Kannada Vachana poetry. His expertise extends from comparative aesthetics, religion and literature and theatre to the semiotics of translations and adaptations. He has explored the theatrical traditions of Karnataka, Northeast, and other parts of the South prolifically, and his literary works have been translated into most Indian languages, as well as into English, French, German, Italian, and Spanish, the former editor of the Sahitya Academy Journal, Indian Literature. Professor H.S. Shiva Prakash served as director of Tagore Center in Berlin. I Keep Vigil of Rudra is his translation of the Kannada Vachanas, and an extremely popular work. And if I talk about his theatrical books on theatre, Incredible India Traditional Theatres is a masterpiece to understand the opulence of diverse folk performance traditions of India. Ins and Outs of Indian Theatre again gives us an opportunity to explore the intangible living heritage of the country. 4 plays are some of his works that are widely received and acknowledged in the theatre world. Now I request Professor Prakash to take over whenever you are ready, sir. A warm welcome, sir. So you need to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. I can hear
you. Am I audible?
Yes, sir. You are audible.
Thank you, Shubha, for inviting me here. And there are 2 problems. I am not very well, so my voice may not have the same strength it normally has. And also, I am working with mobile data because there's no internet, because there's power failure in the area at the moment. But right now, I think the internet is working fine, and I hope it won't abandon us in between. And I also pray that power may come back soon. You have asked me to talk about narrative as performance in folk theatres, particularly with respect to South Indian folk traditions. First of all, let me tell you people that folk traditions all over India, all over the world, have same patterns and same structures. Only the content of folk theatre is region specific. There are lots of trans-regional elements in folk theatres of our country and of the world. For example, when somebody is listening to ball music, one wonders how the tune there resembles a South Indian folk song. Because the elements of folk arts, like tunes and metaphors and rhythms, have been traveling over ages, because folklore is part of our shared, intangible heritage. But it has also a lot of diversity amongst these uniformities. It has a lot of diversity, which are region-specific, particularly the content of each regional folk expression varies from place to place. Right now, there are lots of, what should I say, the inaccuracies in the way we talk about folk theatres. For example, the word folklore, to the best of my knowledge, folklore studies, folkloristics came into India in the 60s in the last century, when folklore department was opened in Kashmir University, and Professor Jawaharlal Nehru
It's like we have lost, sir.
And I often wonder whether there's any word, a concept which is a folklore in pre-modern Indian languages. When you look at Sanskrit tradition of poetics and aesthetics, they always talk about two dimensions of cultural expression, Desi and Marga. Particularly, a text on musicology written by Bruhadesi.
So you need to unmute yourself. So can you unmute yourself? No, we can't hear you, sir. We can't hear you. Can you unmute yourself?
Can you hear me? I have unmuted myself. Hear me.
Sir, we can hear you, sir. You can switch off the camera and then speak. Probably that will.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Is it clear now?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Is the audio clear? Okay, that's fine.
Your voice is clear, sir. We can hear
So,
you.
Desi and Marga. Desi is considered to be something spontaneous, whereas Marga is considered to be refined. For example, when a cowherd is singing a song, when he's herding the cattle, he is being himself. He's not being. Hello, hello.
We can hear you, sir. Please
Yeah.
continue. Please continue.
Please bear with us. Disruption is happening. I'm doing my best anyway. Whereas when a classical singer like Kumar Gandharv is singing, is refined and self-conscious. So there are these two polarities in Desi and Marga. Desi is regional, Marga is trans-regional. For example, our vernacular languages are specific Desi and
Oh. Participants, we are really sorry for these disturbances. Please bear with us. We'll try to work on these problems.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, I can hear you. I can hear you.
Yeah. See, unmuting is happening automatically every time it happens, and I'm unmuting myself.
Okay.
So, folk expressions refer to the rural cultural practices, and which can be identified with the agrarian societies, whereas tribal law is associated with the cultural practices of communities which are in a pre-agrarian mode of living. Now, we have villages all over India. India is a country of villages, and there are innumerable kinds of folk cultural practices, and theatre is one among them. And theatre in folk traditions goes with the narrative. Narrative and theatre are not apart in folk theatre. This is a very important thing to remember. I want to underline this point, but these days in PhD studies, there is too much emphasis on performance at the cost of the text. And these days, there are some scholars who are even talking about post-dramatic theatre, which means they want to jettison the text altogether. They want to put up a play through some kind of improvisation during the rehearsals and so on. Whereas in folk theatre, text is the breadth of performance, and performance is the embodiment of this text. And folk theatres are multi-genre expressions. They have dance as part of them, music as part of them, narrative as part of them, and instrumental music as part of them. So it's a kind of a conglomerate kind of artistic expression. And unlike most theatre today, which is confined to proscenium spaces, modern theatre to a large extent is proscenium theatre. Folk theatre is, for the most part, non-proscenium theatre. It can happen in the environs of a temple, under a tree, in any place where the audience gathers in villages, in village squares, and so on. And folk theatre does not use technology. For example, even in Natya Shastra, Bharata talks about the mounting of sets and props in theatre. Whereas in folk theatre, this is minimal, sometimes it's zero. So it's the agency is the human voice and the human body. And the folk theatre makes most of human resources and does not, unlike modern theatre, put emphasis on material resources like stage, lighting, acoustics, and so on and so forth. And folk theatres normally narrate stories which the audience are already familiar with. For example, lots of folk theatre in India, with the Tirukuttu of Tamil Nadu, Ramlila of the North, or narrations of reenactments of episodes of the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. And who does not know the Ramayana and the Mahabharata all over India? So, at the same way, it doesn't mean that folk theatre deals only with the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. These are important epics, but these are not the only two. There are other stories which are equally popular in different parts of the country. For example, in Manipur, there is a very rich folk theatre called La Haroba, which is a reenactment of the Meitei, the cosmogonic myths of the Meiteis. In South India, for example, lots of folk theatres, which were later transformed into Bhakti theatres. The expressions of Shaivite and Vaishnavite Bhakti, they use the folk elements, and they tell the stories of the lives of great Bhakti saints. And there are the folk traditions which have gradually now turning into classical traditions like Kuchipudi, which deal with episodes from the Srimad Bhagavatam in the life of Krishna. There's a folk form of theatre in Karnataka and Maharashtra called Sri Krishna Parijata, and these plays, comical plays centering around the conflict between Sri Krishna's two spouses, Rukmini and Satyabhama. And there are plays which tell us the stories of local saints. For example, Karnataka, there are two kinds of folk theatre, important kinds of folk theatre. Doddata, which deals with the stories of Rama and the Mahabharata. Doddata means the big play, and there's also Sannata, small plays which deal with the stories, life stories of local saints. Sannata also means Sharanara Ata. Sharanara Ata means the plays of saints, the lives of saints. So these are some of the genres of South Indian theatre, but I'm going to be very specific. I think I have another 30 minutes or so. I'm going to talk about two important and unusual folk narrative performances from my home state, Karnataka. And these both two sections of Dalit community in our state. And the first folk narrative is Manteswami Kavya. This is still a living tradition. Manteswami is an untouchable saint who may have lived some 300 years ago. Lots of legends have grown up about him. Not much history is available about him. Probably he was born somewhere in North Karnataka and came down to the south, and he settled down in the vicinity of the present day between Bangalore and Mysore, some districts in this region. And his shrine is still extant in a place called Rajabappanapura, which is between Bangalore and Mysore. And this tradition, Manteswami tradition, and Manteswami was a great saint, and he had a lot of following, particularly from the exploited castes and communities. And they are initiated into this cult by somebody who's already been initiated into narrating the story of Manteswami. And then they become the followers, the disciples of Manteswami. And they learn from their, the people who initiate them. It could be their parents or some other kind of guru, the art of narrating this story. And this is a story which has many episodes. It tells about how Manteswami came into the world and how he challenged great authorities, and how he ultimately decided to conclude his life by entering, not by dying, by entering into a huge well where he wanted to preserve the balance of the earth. So this is the narrative consists of from songs and prose narrative passages, and each during narration every few minutes is punctuated by the invocation of Monteswami. And this does not involve acting. It's a kind of theater which can be compared to the way Greek theater was before it came onto the Attic stage, when there was only a group of narrators, the chorus, and there was the main singer. In Monteswami also, performance also, there's a main singer supported by supporting singers. And they normally use two instruments. The one instrument is called ektar, one string instrument, and a small hand drum. And these are the only two instruments which are used in this narration. And just as the rhythmic part corresponds to prose, the singing part corresponds to the string instrument. And this is performed sometimes. There are many episodes which can be expanded or contracted according to the time and space, what Sufis call makan and wakan, space and audience. And the occasions they perform are during the festival of the saint. For example, in Rajamopanapura, where there is the shrine of Monteswami, annually troops visit and perform the story of Monteswami's story. And on sacred occasions, when the performers go and perform on the invitation of families during occasions like housewarming, marriage, childbirth, death ceremony, and so on, during auspicious occasions. And they're not full-time performers because most of them are agricultural laborers, or these days some of them have come to cities and work in factories, but this is part of the inheritance. They perform it because of that. But unfortunately, the new generation of these performing communities are becoming cut off from this tradition. At the same time, this story is now being re-invoked in mainstream cultural and literary practices. On the one hand, there's the re-invocation of this Monteswami story in the mainstream culture. At the same time, in the folk culture, it is nearing, though it's still alive as a narrative performance tradition, it's on the way out, because when modern education spreads, like all other folk theatre traditions, Monteswami tradition is also threatened. And we now have another folk narrative called Malay Madeshwara Kavya. Malay means mountains. Madeshwara is the name of the saint who is supposed to be the incarnation of Shiva. And the shrine of Malay Madeshwara is located in near Mysore, in the Malay Madeshwara Hills, Hills. And this temple is located in that area, which was threatened by the presence of that elephant thief Veerappan. So the temple is in that area, and it attracts devotees both from Karnataka and Tamil Nadu. And according to one version of the myth, Monteswami and Malay Madeshwara were two brothers, though they belonged to two different communities of untouchables, and they came into the world at the same time. And Madeshwara went in one direction to reform the world, and Monteswami in another. Now, like in Monteswami Kavya, in Malay Madeshwara Kavya also, we find it's a story of how the protagonist, the Saint Malay Madeshwara, overcomes adversaries, not through his military strengths, but with magical and miraculous powers. And here, the narrators are called Guddas. Guddas means disciples or followers. And The instrument they use, a different kind of instrument, is called kamsare. It's a huge, gong kind of thing, which is very difficult to, play. It needs a lot of practice. When people train doing this since the early childhood, and by playing on the gong, they get into different group formations, like performance of kirtan in Manipur, different kinds of formations like tower and tree, etc., etc., which is a visual delight to watch. So unlike Mante Swami narrated performance, which contains only singing and some gestures and instruments, Malay Madeshwara performance, this is called Kamsare performance, is more evolved. It involves more elaborate dancing and some movement also, more elaborate dancing. And through this, the story is narrated verbally in the champu, a mixture of prose and poetry, and punctuated by interludes of this dance. Again, this is also an initiation cult, and people are initiated into it by people who've already mastered this practitioners. And the speciality of Malay Madeshwara performance, they use this kamsare, which involves some elements of martial dance. And it is said that Hyder Ali, who was Tipu Sultan's father, used this kamsare movements in his warfare with his adversaries. So it has song, dance, and music, plus narration. So the patterns of narration, both are episodic, and both are saints from exploited communities, and they come and challenge the authorities of the powers that be, and assert their superiority to the mighty and the powerful. There's another theatrical form which is even more evolved, which includes drama. For example, Sannata. Sannata is a play about which is not based a non-mainstream story. It could be originally the stories of saints. Later, it became secular stories also. And this involves, apart from song, music, dance, it brings in an element of drama, dialogue, and plot. One popular folk theatrical form, a pre-modern theatrical play called Sangya Balya, which was written around in the 19th century by a schoolmaster in a village in North Karnataka, Pattar master. It's the story of two friends, and very close to each other. But at one point of time, one of them is rich, Sangya is rich, and Balya is poor. And Balya goes on a business trip and asks him to take care of his wife. But Sangya and the Gangi, Gangi, the Balya's wife, they fall in love and they're caught red-handed. And ultimately, they fall in love, and Balya discovers this. He gets so angry, and Balya's brothers are, they hunt and murder Sangya. So it's a murder story. It's a real life happening. It became very popular in the area. This schoolmaster wrote a play about this. And this is the precursor, one of the precursors of modern Kannada theatre. And so we have seen three stages of folk theatre in Karnataka. One is Mante Swami, which has only music and singing and narration, verbal and music, and Malay Madeshwara, which has music, song, and dance, and Sannata, like this this Alama Probailata, or the one I talked about, this Sangya Badia, which also the theater is over-added to the other elements. So these show folk theaters at different stages of evolution. And as I said, the performers of the first two kinds of theater, Madheshwara and Manteswami, and there are many others. There's one Junjappa story, which is the story of the cultural hero of the Yadav community of the north, the Golla community. They're called Gollas in South India, and also stories of Renuka Devi, which is which is also in borders of Karnataka, and so these are all sacred stories of the exploited sections of, for example, this the Renuka Devi performance, Yellamanata, is associated with the deity Yellama, who is the favorite deity, Ishtadevata of Devadasis in that region. So all Devadasis go and worship this deity in a festival every year. And there was also a custom of the devotees going there and nude to offer the nude worship, which was of course contested by many rational intellectuals. There was a big controversy about it. So apart from look at this theatrical narrative performances are placed in the context of a festival or a rite or ritual. For example, Manteswami, Madheshwara, the narrative performance happens in the Madheshwara Hills, the sacred temple, which is dedicated to deity. And this also involves, apart from these theatrical elements, a ritualistic element, because after the conclusion of this narration, the Guddas, the performers, they go through a fire ordeal. A huge pit full of burning cinders is prepared, and it will be about some 10 to 15 feet long, 3-4 feet long, broad, and the performer, after the singing, invoking the name of the saint, they walk through this fire. And I've seen this with my own eyes a couple of times, and nothing happens to them. So this ritual of fire walking, fire ordeal, also becomes part of this theatrical performance. So the ritualistic element is also part of it. For example, when Manteswami is performed during auspicious occasions in houses, these are the rites like childbirth or marriage or death ceremony and so on and so forth. Whereas Sangya Bali and also the day themselves, theatrical performance itself becomes a kind of ritual. For example, Terracotta, Tamil Nadu, which is mostly Draupadi's story, the Mahabharata story with emphasis on Draupadi, it's performed in regions where there is not enough rainfall. So it is supposed to be a fertility ritual in Tamil Nadu. So the performance of Tirukuttu appears to bring fertility to the land. This is the belief of the people. So these, apart from being entertainment, they're also connected with the well-being of the people, because the performance of Manteswami story or Madhemadeshwar story at Tirukuttu is supposed to bring blessings to the community. So this therapeutic and healing dimension is a very important part of our folk theatre. What is important to notice is that in folk theatre, there's no contradiction between the text and performance. They merge into each other. There's no confusion of different genres, like tragedy and comedy. They can move from the most tragic to the most comic. I conclude by giving you, I think my time is up, and if the question on answer session, there's some questions I can answer. I can add, tell you more. I was watching a performance of a Bhawai play in Panchmahal district in Gujarat. It is a story of Bhartrhari. It's again a very famous story in the folk performance. Gorakhnath Bhartrhari is in North India. Bhartrhari is one of the Navanathas, the Nathas in the cult. And the story is that Bhartrhari becomes completely disillusioned with his worldly life when he catches his wife red-handed in a compromising situation with his minister. So Bhartrhari goes on goes hunting, and when he comes back, he sees his wife and the trusted minister, in a compromising situation. Then he decides, well, women are all like this; they are traps, and they bind us in the material world. He decides to become a yogi, and then the queen, she confesses her guilt, and she asks for his forgiveness. And on that occasion, when this part was being staged here, it was an open theater. It was performed in the outside house, and she starts singing, and the audience was sitting on all four sides. No electricity, only torchlights and so on. And it was all men theater, no women there in the performance. So this boy who was playing the queen started singing that sad song, asking for the husband's forgiveness and so on. But his voice started creaking. And the drama master was sitting right there. I asked him, he asked him, "You bloody fellow, रात को वो दारू पी लिया था क्या? तुम आके बेच जाओ." So he called that guy. He asked him to sit on the tabla, and he asked the tabla man to go and play the queen. And how did the tabla man become the queen? He just said this small, towel or something. He wore it like this, and he became the queen. And he started singing the song of the queen. And people laughed, but when he got back into singing, the same seriousness came back to the performance in the audience. So this is a very important element of the hallmark of folk theatre is flexibility. We can perform it anywhere, and it's always audience sensitive. So for example, when the folk performer is doing a serious role, when he sees the audience is getting bored, he'll introduce a joke. He's resonating with the audience all the time. And it's a context-sensitive theatre. Flexible form of theatre, open form of theatre. Is this openness, flexibility, and spontaneity of folk theatre, which our modern theatre has killed, thanks to our blind imitation of Western theatrical practices, and these days, even more blind imitation of Eurocentric, post-structuralist, postmodern theories, which have absolutely no relevance to India. We didn't need post-structuralist theory to discover a folk theatres, because folk theatres have always been there. But these theatres are newfangled theories which have come from the West, which has no bearing on the theatre. Why the hell we are using that, I still don't understand. This is a failure of theatre intelligentsia, that we're shamelessly using the terms which are completely anachronous, completely pointless in our context. So our folk theatres need to be addressed and understood in their own context, not only in their context of place and time, and also in the historical process where they're being challenged by the modern, the transformations in modern society, the globalization and so on. That's the subject for another day. So I have done my best to give you a brief introduction to folk theatre, narratives and performances, with emphasis on my own state, Karnataka. So I'll stop here, and I'm sorry for the disruption of the internet. Now the power has come back. I wish power had come back a little earlier, but like our folk deities, electricity has its own whims and fancies. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Can you switch on your video now? I mean, can you try switching on it?
Yeah.
If it supports the system, then we can continue.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, we can
Just
see.
wait, somebody is at the door. I'll answer that. Just give me 1 minute.
Sure, sir. Participants, you may write your observations and questions for Professor H.S. Shiva Prakash in the chat box. If you have any queries regarding the different folk traditions, theatre traditions of the South, even musical traditions of the South, you may ask to Professor Shiva Prakash. He will answer your queries. Thank you so much, sir, for giving us an extensive coverage of the diverse folk theatrical traditions of the South. And it was truly enlightening because most of us are quite unaware of those wonderful dramatic traditions. And your lecture has provided a wealth of ideas to pursue. And in fact, most of us scholars and researchers would know how to pursue research in the folk theater traditions, as this is our identity, our national identity, our cultural identity, and we should start working in these areas. And sir, I have few queries. I mean, I have seen your engagement with diverse folk theater traditions, and as a creative intellectual, you have illustrated heterogeneity and plurality of the Indian subalterns in your plays. And you have talked about the various troubles, various sufferings of the marginalized sections. So I would like to know, how you decided to give voice to, to these underprivileged characters. And have you ever faced any conflict between the aesthetic and the moral choices that are there? As a playwright, you would like to answer.
Yeah. The first dimension of this question is my relationship with my own context. My first play, Mahachaitra, which is a historical play, but which also draws a lot of elements from folk traditions, which is about the life of a great Bhakti saint of Karnataka, Basavanna, who reformed Karnataka society by challenging caste and gender inequalities. That play became the center of a wild controversy in the early 90s, and because a group of religious fanatics thought this play was anti-spiritual, because where I talked about the passing away of this saint, we have no history, there are different versions. I mentioned all those contradictory versions in my play, but the faithful people believe that he just went to Kailasa with his body, which is okay. But I don't question that faith. But in folklore, another area, there are other kinds of depictions of his passing away. So that created a lot of controversy. I lived under threat for 4 years, and I was called the Salman Rushdie of Karnataka and so on. I hated it because I don't like Salman Rushdie. So it was a textbook in 3 universities, and the violent controversy. There was burning of buses and stoning of university buildings and beating up of the supporters of the rationalists who supported the book and so on. So this drama lasted for about 3-4 years, and it's all there in a book called The Book and the Threat by one Girija Kumar, the former librarian of JNU. One chapter is entirely devoted to this book, and one of the novels by Geeta Hariharan, In Times of whatever, that novel is loosely connected with this episode, this one thing. So this is one example of how I got into conflict with my times in my society. And it became a big debating point in the legislative assemblies and councils. And so some parties, particularly the Hindutva party opposing the book, and the rest, even the secular parties, there was a division, so it divided the state vertically, and the whole state, though it was not properly recorded by historians. I don't know why, because such a big controversy, violent controversy, did not center around any other book, to the best of my knowledge, in modern Indian history. But this important part of history was kind of erased from our historical memory. And people don't talk about it.
Okay.
And secondly, I later learned that it's important to convey the truth and without hurting the sentiments of people. So I wrote many other plays. The play like my most famous play called Mante Swami Katha Prasanga, and it has done some more than 900 shows now in the last 20 years, and still the play is in demand. And whenever it happens, it's a houseful show. It's a very popular play. This play also, gives strong message against, gender inequality and caste inequality. But this is accepted people. People don't try to oppose this. So I think as a playwright, I'm still learning how to express disturbing truths without disturbing the audiences. And this has been my great learning experience in theatre.
We are grateful for that. So it's such an inspiring story from your life. I mean, we are learning from your experiences. Sir, another great play that I have heard about, written by you, Malviya the Cobbler.
This is the play based on the second epic I talked about, Malay Madeshwara Kavya. Okay.
Okay.
And you see, this was the first I wrote this Mante Swami play, and because these two stories are complementary, I wanted to write the play on the second saint also, and also because of my personal relationship with the saint, because my mother believed that I was born with the blessings of this saint. So I owed it to my mother to write this play. And this epic is the longest oral epic found in the world. Some people say Kalevala, the Finnish epic, is the longest, but Malay Madeshwara is even longer. And as I said, series of episodes how Malay Madeshwara came into the world, and I focused on the last episode. It's called the episode of King Samana. In this episode, King Samana, a kind of a paradigm of world conqueror, has conquered all the countries of the world and all the elements, the sun, moon, and the last target is Mother Earth, whom he invades and conquers, and he wants to marry Mother Earth. And at that time, Malay Madeshwara comes to the rescue of Mother Earth, and he brings him the gift of sandals made of burning flesh by his untouchable ancestors, and offers it as a gift. The moment Samana king wears these sandals on the occasion of his marriage with the Earth Mother, his whole body turns into a pillar of flame. So the folk stories, though they're region specific, the message is not region specific. Both Mante Swami and Malay Madeshwara Kavya are talking about universal themes. So it's wrong to say that folk theatre is entirely regional, though the some aspects of it which are regional, they also have lots of universal messages and universal meanings. So Malay Madeshwara is an example of that. This play became quite successful in Canada, but it was became more of a success in a remote place like Assam, because this play in English translation was performed in Delhi by the great Manipuri director Lokendra Arambam, And then this was discovered by my theatre guru, Oja Kanelal from Manipur. And he introduced this play to the Assamese, young Assamese director, Shukracharya Rabha, who passed away unfortunately prematurely. And he did it in Assamese. And then the play was done in the Rabha language, of tribal language of Assam. And it became a great success. And this play became, opened a new chapter in the theatre history of Rabha people. It led to the evolution of modern theatre among the Rabha community. So when I wrote this play, I had no idea about the existence of the Rabha community, and neither had Rabhas ever thought about Malviya Madheshwara. Through this, kind of exchange, theatre exchange, what was imagined in Karnataka, it was embodied in Assam as a part of the cultural self-expressions, cultural self-apprehensions of the Rabha community. So this is how theatre travels. It has always traveled. And this kind of travel is more important than what happens in theatre festivals, which are organized either by multinational companies or funded national state government institutions.
Thank you, sir. Sir, we have heard so much about some of the important folk traditions from the South. And in fact, our participants are asking if we could throw light on Yakshagan, Bhavai, and Purulia Cho Nach. If you could briefly tell us about
these. Purulia Nach is not from the South, so northeastern part of India. It's in Bengal. There are three kinds of Chau Nach, Purulia, and Mayurbhanj in Assam, and Saraikela in Jharkhand. It's a kind of masked dance theatre which uses a lot of gymnastics, whereas Mayurbhanj doesn't use mask. Whereas in Purulia and in Saraikela, mask is very important. They tell mythical stories and a lot of gymnastics, parading movements and so on. And the dialogues are spoken by the narrators because the faces are so intricately masked they can't speak. That is, so it's northeastern part of it. Bhavai is part of, it is a folk theatrical form from Gujarat.
Yes.
And the followers of Bhavai, it's interesting that different folk forms are related to different temples. For example, Purulia Chau is related to Shiva temple located in that area. And it's part of this annual festival of Shiva temple, where they also this charak, people who have, ask for boons, once the boons are given, they put up a, kind of spring to their spine, and this tied to a wheel, they go around like this. That's how they, express the devotion to deity. So it's part of that whole festival, It happens, I think, in the autumn season. And the Bhavai, performers of Bhavai are supposed to be the devotees of Ambaji. Ambaji is a famous Devi temple in Gujarat. So this is from Gujarat, the western part of India. Whereas the other two you asked, which are the other two you asked me? Bhavai.
Sir, something about Yakshagan, because Girish Karnad talks about...
Yakshagana. See, the actual name of Yakshagana is Bayalata. Bayalata means open play. Play in open space. Ata means play. Like Leela in North India, in South India is Ata. And Yakshagana is the name of a literary form. It's a Champu Kavya, which mixes prose and poetry, tells mythical stories. So it was performed in a theatrical genre of Bayalata. It was called Yakshagana Bayalata. Later, the name of the literary genre was identified with the theatrical form. But Bayalata the different kinds of Bayalata in Karnataka. One is in the interior regions, where I talked about Dodata and Sannata, where there is stylization, but not too much stylization. Whereas Yakshagana Bayalata is from coastal Karnataka, and this has drawn elements from a lot of regional folk theatres like Teyyam and so on, Bhutta Kunita, etc. And it's a lot more stylized. And it's a specific aspect of Yakshagana, the coastal area. They have found a compromise between the actual face and the mask. They paint the face. It's called Mukhavarnike. The face is painted like a mask. Okay. And again, there is a narrator who sings the story and actors who perform. And Yakshagana is a very audience-sensitive form. When the action is in progress, audiences may respond in different ways, and actors senses it, and immediately, for example, there's too much seriousness, it brings in a joke, which is not there in the text. So the singing part, the text part is already there, whereas the acting is mostly improvisation on the part of the actor. The storyline is there, dialogues are there, but the beauty of Yakshagana depends on the spontaneous elements the actor brings into it. I said this spontaneity and openness of folk theatre is what our Alkazi kind of theatre has murdered in Indian theatre.
Usually it's seen that in the northern traditions, there is heavy reliance on musical instruments like sarangi, harmonium, nagada. And so what are the popular instruments, musical instruments that are used in Kannada theatre, Kannada folk theatre?
It depends on which genre. In Yakshagana,
Okay.
drums and some kind of shahnai. And as mentioned, egatari in some forms, and gongs, and so on.
So at this point, with your permission, I would like to take up some questions that our participants have sent.
Yeah. Please.
Pallavi Mishra, I'll take up the first question that I got. Jyotsna wants to know, first of all, she compliments you for the great session. She thanks you for the great session. And then she wants to know how the folk traditions embedded the themes of freedom struggle to awaken people as the people get related to the folk art forms.
Folk theatre, strictly speaking, in my region at least, did not depict freedom struggle, but they talked about indirectly about the oppression under British government. For example, this play Sangya Balia I told you about. Balia, who killed Sangya for having had a go with his wife, this revenge was justified by the local community because Sangya had betrayed him. So according to the system of ethics, perfectly all right. But the police case, then the British magistrate was there in that area, and the British government has already entered this area, and the police case was booked. These murderers tried in the court, and they're given death sentence. When this happened, there was a protest in those villages against British justice. There's another pre-modern folk play called Kadlimatti Station Master, in which a village girl who's traveling somewhere, she has to spend the night in the railway station, and she's raped by the postmaster, sorry, station master. So in these ways, they talk about how the foreign culture, rule and culture is disrupting our the fabric of the regional society. Of course, the folk themes were dealt with openly in a professional theatre and also in the modern Kannada theatre. For example, one of our best-known playwrights, Adyaranga Shashanuna Sriranga, has written a lot of plays about the freedom struggle and its aftermath. But this is not. But sometimes freedom struggle was indirectly, depicted. For example, in Tamil Nadu, the great Tamil poet Subramania Bharatiyar composed a play called Panchali Shabanam. It's about Draupadi's, vow to avenge Dushasana. So the play is about how Draupadi was molested at the court of Kauravas and how she curses them. And this play, Bharatiya brought in resonances to the freedom struggle. Draupadi became a kind of embodiment of Mother India, and the Kauravas became the symbolic of the British. So this kind of resonance was there, but it was not a realistic depiction of the freedom struggle of folk theatre, to the best of my knowledge. Can't hear you.
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Pallavi Mishra, another of our participants, would like to ask, are ritualistic performances like fire walking a part of folk theatre, or are they considered sacred in the folk imagination? Are they questioned by the state?
The fire walking is part of the festival, where the folk narrative performance also happens. Now, a lot of scholars have said that ritual is the beginning of the theatre. But in my understanding, this is not correct. Though many big scholars have said that. Festival is the beginning of both ritual and theatre. Festival provides the context. Later, ritual, frees itself from the festival context, and theatre also free. So, festival provides the framework, total framework. For even in ancient Greece, the ritual of Dionysus was part of this annual festival of Dionysus, winter festivals.
Yes. So, are they questioned by the practitioners, the folk performers, when they walk on the embers? Are they questioned by the state government? Or is it acceptable?
Till now, it's not happened.
Okay.
But some of these rituals have been subjected to questioning. For example, I talked about this nude worship of Yellama by Devadasis. And then there's this CD, this performance I talked about in Purulia, where people tie a kind of string to the back and they go around a wheel, that kind of thing. It's called CD ritual. A lot of people opposed it. They thought it was inhuman. Controversy happens, and some of these things which need to change, perhaps.
Prerna Sinha wants to know, to what extent does Marathi theatre follow folk theatre traditions? Kindly shed light on this.
See, Maharashtra has different conventions, though there was a lot of exchange with Marathi and Kannada theatre in the border areas of Belgaum. For example, the place where the Sangya Balya story took place is the border area between Maharashtra and Karnataka. And during the emergence of modern theatre, many Karnataka troops, touring theatre groups, visited Maharashtra, and they came to Karnataka, and there was a lot of competition between them. But Marathi theatre has not produced as many folk-based modern plays and productions like Karnataka. In Marathi, the only play is that kind is Gashiram Kotwal by Vijay Tendulkar. The modern Marathi theatre has been, drama theatre has been predominantly realistic, and it's more prose than our Kannada theatre.
Yeah, that brought to my mind Gashiram Kotwal, that many of my colleagues and I have taught in the classroom, and it beautifully brings out diverse musical and dancing traditions, Lavani and Abhanga, Ganesh Vandana, and so on. Satsang also. So that was quite an exhilarating experience. One or two more questions, and then I'll just see if I can. So, Dr. Sanjay Wagmere wants to know what measures should be taken to make I think his question is about the folk theatre traditions better in the future. It's a very vague term, though better in the sense. But
I
connected
don't know,
to that,
I don't know whether there can be an agenda for reforming folk theatre.
Mhm.
Now, as I said, a lot of folk theatres are under threat. The modernization, which is very good in many ways, is also has some minuses, which eclipses the lots of cultural practices of people, and what has to be preserved, how much has to be preserved. This is something that we need to debate about and find solutions to. For example, a lot of folk theatres have been male dominant, and women have no place. And a lot of stories which are in folk tales, for example, this Butler story, it's against just a moment. So, so those aspects are changing. Society is changing. For example, the many folk forms are the products of caste society, and to preserve the cultural richness of these expressions does not mean we should endorse the inequalities which was there in the context of these cultural expressions. So these are things that have to we find solutions to. How much is to be preserved and how to preserve it, because we can't ask the posterity of the Montessori tradition, the kids not to go to school, not to become engineers and doctors and whatever, IAS officers. But when they do that, these great cultural forms, what will happen to them? So how to preserve them? And I think the best way of preserving them is to inculcate them into a cultural practice, like a lot of modern Indian playwrights have been doing, though some of the ways they have been doing, according to me, are very dangerous. I'm not going into that, because they look at them as forms, but they don't look at them as kind of cultural expressions, or as the responses to certain human situations. So these are things that we should look at, I think.
One last question, maybe, or one observation by Jyotsa. This is like, what is your take? What is your take on the paradigm? Can you hear me?
I can't hear you. You're inaudible.
Okay, but my mic is unmuted. Can someone give an indication whether I'm audible or not? Okay. I think you touched your audio, sir. Can you hear me now?
I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now? I think you need to touch your audio.
Yeah.
Can you hear me now? So can you hear me? No? Okay, so we have been trying our best. Yes, sir.
Now I can hear you, yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, sir. I just wanted to ask you your take on the paradigm of authentic folk traditions, as people have been talking about it, that it should not be corrupted and it should stay as it is. It should not...
There's nothing pure in folk form. The question of authenticity is still valid, because, for example, a lot of modern Indian theatre, folk stories have been used to illustrate a modern theme. That way is authentic, and folk styles, elements from folk theatre have been used to decorate modern theatre. I think these are very inauthentic. But when modern minds resonate with folk theatre and they are able to create new theatrical possibilities, which was not there in the folklore, which is not there in modern theatre. And the best example for this kind of theatre are two great directors, modern Indian theatre directors, one Habib Tanveer and the other is Oja Kanailal from Manipur. A lot of others, like including the director of Gashiram Kotwal, have used folk theatrical elements only in a decorative way, which I think is disrespecting those forms, because they're not just forms, they are cultural practices of a people.
Thank you so much, sir, for such an extensive and nuanced analysis of different folk theatre traditions of our country. And it has been truly an enlightening and thought-provoking sessions. And we have a lot to pursue in terms of following the various theatrical traditions of our country. And this brings me to the end of the session. And here I would like to propose a formal vote of thanks. And first and foremost, I would like to thank you for accepting our invitation, for taking time out despite your health issues and also the network glitches that we had to face intermittently. You remained with us, and it was sheer determination on your part that you could deliver so much. And we were fortunate enough to gain so much throughout the process, and we could hear you properly. We would like to ensure this thing that all of us enjoyed your lecture thoroughly and we learned a lot. After that, I would like to express my gratitude to our honorable principal, Professor Gyantosh Kumar Jhaji, for providing this platform and this wonderful opportunity in the form of the refresher course for collaborative learning. Thanks to all my perceptive colleagues who have remained with us despite the intermittent disturbances. They never lost their patience, they never lost their interest. And it was truly appreciative to have them throughout the session. Then the team, the technical team of the refresher course committee, and obviously the IQAC in charge, Professor Vinita Tuli, for such a wonderful leadership and for guiding us for running the refresher course in such a smooth manner. And in the end, I would just like to say, friends, this session has been particularly fruitful in terms of knowing a playwright's perspective on the state of indigenous performance traditions, and that's very rare to find. And we have scholars talking about theatre, we have performers, and this was one rare opportunity when we also got to hear the playwright's perspective on the state of indigenous performances traditions and the various practices. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for being with us. So you can leave if you want, and now I hand over to the...
Thank you all.